Hello, everyone. Welcome, Julia. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm Tomas Forgac. Julia is an anti-state activist and Bitcoin activist. We're going to talk about that in a minute, and you'll be able to ask questions if you want to. There's a field right below the video. Just shoot a question. You can upvote any other question you like. We'll pick them up as we go and talk about them. Before we start, I'd like to mention one thing. You've all probably heard about Google blocking ads for antiwar.com for some weird reasons. Now, Bitcoin.bombs.com runs a contest related to this for the best anti-war or pro-peace memes that would, expose sort of this activity. Would be great if you join there. Our prices for it: Roger Beer and Luxtech donated 1 Bitcoin for the winner, and there are a few other great prices like 10 ounces of silver and 1 ounce of Bitcoin equivalent silver and so on. So it's bitcoin.bombs.com. You can send your submissions to don'texposeevil@bitcoin.bombs.com. And all the submissions will be published, and the winner or a few winners will get one of these great prizes. Welcome again, and hi, Julia.
Hello.
So you're an anti-state activist. Could you now we know how state with its monopoly over the violence and law enforcement, how it misuses and exploits its position. We've seen it just recently, a couple of days ago, with the policeman shooting innocent man or unarmed man in the back. But it is less clear how the state misuses its position over a monopoly of the money, and too many people still think this is somehow desired and it gives money the value. So how do you see this related, the monopoly of the state over money and its ability to exploit that position and to infringe on our rights?
Well, money is just human interaction with value. So if you control money, then you control human beings. That's simple to me.
Yeah, it reminds me of Erik, who was on the last show, who quoted that famous quote, "Give me control of nations' money, and I care not who makes its laws." Um,
hmm
so, what activities related to liberty and to Bitcoin are you mostly into?
What? Oh, I don't know. Anything, anything that's important, I guess. It depends what's going on. That's a really, I don't even know how to answer that.
Yeah, you've been you've had first-hand experience with the Silk Road trial. Um, Silk Road, we know, or most of us know what it is. It's an honest website that just provided a marketplace for the free market without infringement of the government to take place, and the government clamped down on it. It arrested the founder, and it started what I would call monster process that would be typical for the place where you and I were born in, behind the Iron Curtain. Um, can you tell us a little bit more about how the process went? What were your findings, and your feelings from the whole thing?
Basically, Schumer, which is, NYC's ruling hand, uh, wants to crack down on cryptocurrency. So he was a huge push for this case ending up the way it has ended up. He hand selected the judge. Her name's Forrest, and it went according to his plan. Uh, we now know that a lot of the things that occurred during the trial well, I knew this while I was there, and a lot of the public didn't really get that information until now. A lot of the information was actually either redacted or not allowed to even be presented to the jury, let alone talked about publicly. And now we find out that two federal agents were actually responsible for huge sums of Bitcoin laundering between, Mt. Gox and into their own pockets. And one of them was responsible for having uh, like the conversation with the hitman. So we weren't allowed to know about this, and now we know about it, and we know that the judge knew about it, and we know that Schumer knew about it, we know that the prosecution knew about it, and it was hidden from being part of the trial. How is that justice? How is that following any kind of uh, legal practice that's supposed to be, the kind of the pinnacle of American justice and liberty? I mean, why do we have courts? To make sure that guilty people get punished and innocent people don't. Why do we have the system? The system is very easily played, and that was what happened.
Yeah, it was proposed to us. So you're saying, and this is something that I haven't so far considered. So you're saying one of the main motivations behind the whole process was the prosecutor's actual hatred towards the cryptocurrencies in general?
Schumer wants to crack down in the state of New York. He wants to, and in the city especially, he wants to crack down on cryptocurrencies, and he wants to make sure that certain laws are, in place. And he has close ties with Losky, who did the bit license, and it's all very incestual. It's the same powers driving the same oppressions over freedoms, as it always has been. And it takes one guy who doesn't like Bitcoin to, throw a guy in jail over it, or to throw a couple of people in jail over it, or to put forward a bill that's going to throw even more people in jail for it. So, I mean, for people to think that we're free in any sense, yeah, sure, a lot of us are free because we haven't freaking done anything to feel the state's hand on, uh, any part of our bodies. But the people that do things often get thrown and locked away because, they are watching. They are watching. They don't want us to transgress any of the plans that they have for how society should function and how much tax people should pay, etc. So, I mean, I was talking to I work at my parents and I own a restaurant, and I was talking to one of our regulars about it, and he was just interested, and I told him what happened in the trial, and he's like, that's not legal. That's no way that that's happened. Like, I had to convince him that this even occurred because he couldn't fathom in his mind that's how crony the whole system was. Like, he's like, but that's illegal. That's not. You can't just withhold evidence. I'm like, yeah, you can. The judge does whatever she wants because Schumer has told her exactly what to do, and she needs her career to go forward.
Yeah, this was so. This is the I think this is the lowest level, the district judge, which is probably looking at moving upwards and using this as a career, destroying young man's life over her career. I mean, there were some moments that you and others reported, which were fascinating. Ross' mother reported about this as well. That she basically changed her mind over a weekend that she agreed to allow a witness or witness in on Friday, but then or Thursday I think was the last day of the trial. Then came the weekend, and on Monday she came back and she said, actually, no, this will not be allowed. And my question is, who did she meet in those 3 days? Who gave her notes and instructions? And there were some other moments, like Andreas was not allowed as a witness because he's not a credible Bitcoin expert. I mean, Andreas, whom else? Like, list top 3 people in the world whom you consider Bitcoin experts. No one in his same mind would probably not include Andreas. Like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah, he was the first, she asked me what my opinion on that was. I'm like, get Andreas. He's well spoken and he can put it in layman's terms for the very dumbass jury. And he was denied. He was denied. And if you were there, it was ludicrous. So first of all, the family had hired a private investigator from England to to hold their own investigation about the server, about everything that went on online, about the hard drive, and all of this stuff, right? And she wasn't allowed to say anything. She flew down there from England. They paid for all of the stuff. She sat there and she was instructed basically not to say anything. They literally introduced her, asked her like one question, and then she left. So obviously the restrictions the judge put on this defense's witness was so stringent that she literally couldn't say anything. And then Andrea's being denied and other witnesses being denied. They had like 2, 3 witnesses, and they weren't allowed to say freaking anything. It was an abhorrent, uh, power grab by her.
Yeah, it was sad. Well, let's hope new rounds of this trial will go better. We'll see. Okay, let's move to something a little bit more cheerful. I want to remind everyone, if you wanna ask some questions, just type them below the video. So I've seen you attended some very interesting conferences and events recently. Do you have any favorite moments? Do you have any favorite products? Any new trends that you are really hyped about in Bitcoin that you've noticed recently at those events?
I have a favorite moment at one of the conferences. It was an Inside Bitcoins conference in London, and there was a regulation panel that was saying things like, the regulators are our friends, they're just trying to help us, they're doing a great job, we should comply, and this will help the community overall. And I had my extensions in, and like long blonde extensions in. I had like a pink jumpsuit on. I had pink heels on. I had like my like gold Michael Kors purse. Like I looked bimmed out. It was really funny. So I get up. I get the last question, which was great. I get up, and everyone's like looking at me like, who is this? Like, why is she at a Bitcoin conference? Um, and then I say, so let's imagine that ISIS begins to use Bitcoin and the government flips out and bans it outright. Are you guys going to follow the regulation and stop anything to do with Bitcoin? Nobody answered me. The way I precursored the question, I said, I know this is, I don't, what did I say? I said, I know this is an unfair question, but I think it's reasonable in its unfairness. And the guy that answered me was, no, that's not a crazy question at all. I'm like, I didn't say it was crazy. So now he's already framing my question in an insane way, like I'm some crazy person, right? Even though ISIS put out a document saying they are interested in using Bitcoin. So then all of them pussyfoot around my question. Nobody answers me, and they just kind of like, dismiss it. After that, one of them starts harassing me on Twitter. I'm like, I'm here, man. Come talk to me to my face. Are you 5? You wouldn't talk to me to my face. The other guys ignored me, and the youngest guy there came up to me and he says, thank you for asking that question. It's actually a really good question, and I'm sorry I couldn't answer you publicly because of my job, but yes, I would get out of Bitcoin if ISIS started using it and the government banned it. I'm like, thank you for your honesty. So that was my favorite
Yeah,
moment.
the difference of someone dealing with you on Twitter or Reddit, which I know is your favorite platform, and in person is sometimes fascinating. Anything else? So this was
In
London.
terms of like, in terms,
Sorry, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna mention companies I like, but we can do that later.
No, go ahead, go ahead. I mean, if you have something, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, well, I thought you asked like what tech am I excited about? I know, I kind of, there's a few things that I really like. I'm not sure, of course, Dark Wallet's taking a while, but hopefully that comes out. zero cash taking a while again. All the good things are kind of not happening yet, so I just have to keep waiting. But I think maybe that just means they're not rushing it and they're really working towards something that's going to be really good. Other companies, I do like things that expose regular people to Bitcoin. Like, not everyone falls in love with it and wants to like get to the nitty gritty. So I like Purse. I think that's cool. Purse.io. You can like people can spend their Amazon points to buy you stuff, and they get paid in Bitcoin for buying you stuff. Or you can buy stuff for people on Amazon, and they pay you in Bitcoin, and you get discounts. So that's cool. I like Change Tip. I mean, it's off blockchain, but it's a I've been writing about the tipping culture online like way before Change Tip was even a real thing. So that's like part of the reason I'm excited about it, because I was like wanting that to exist. Yeah, I don't know. I'll mention anything else that comes to mind as we talk.
Yeah, the microtransactions. I mean, this is something that many of us expected, and I've been talking about microtransactions with Bitcoin. But the fact is that the transaction fees, I mean, they are very small for your day-to-day your transfers and purchases. I mean, a few days ago, I transferred you a few $100 worth of Bitcoin from Singapore to the US, in a minute, and it cost virtually nothing. But for the microtransactions, the fees are not insignificant. So off-chain processors like ChangeTip that facilitate that seem like a great deal for these kind of payments for articles or music or whatever, very small amounts where even that small fee could be fairly, at least psychologically significant portion
Yeah,
of that
well,
fee.
the thing with that too, it exposes people to Bitcoin really easily. Like, I can change tip, Penn Jillette, be like, hey, and then you click this link, you're like, oh, Bitcoin, oh, it's that easy. I mean, until you use it on some level, you won't really get how cool it is. So, I mean, at the very least, the exposure is beneficial, and maybe 1 out of 1,000 of those people will realize the the more grand implications of this technology. Not just for tipping and having fun. This tech has some very interesting worldwide implications that can elevate ethics for everybody and can de-elevate control.
You mentioned Penn Jillette. Is he already into Bitcoin?
I have no idea. I don't think so.
Penn Jillette.
Hopefully
If
soon.
someone knows Penn Jillette, send this to him. This is 18th minute of the show. Send him straight to 18 minutes of the show, and we encourage him to get into Bitcoin immediately. He doesn't like the state, and Bitcoin is a great thing to fight the state. So get the message to him. Whoever knows him, he would be a
I
great
do know
ally.
someone who's working on it, so hopefully she's successful.
Well, if it's she should be.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, you published a beautiful video yesterday or the day before yesterday. Stages. I mean, it could be called stages of a Bitcoiner. We all went through all of them, and you listed them in a very blunt way, and I'm sure many of us found ourselves in the process. Can you talk about it? Can you summarize it a little bit?
Yeah, I if the video is called Bitcoin is not a honey badger. So the honey badger meme is like the honey badger doesn't give a fuck and you can do anything to it, Cobra bites it, like wakes up later. It it gives Bitcoin an impenetrable image of, you know, that it can't fail, that it can't be controlled, that it can't be censored, which is only half true. And I think it's important to face that hard truth, or it's a hate fact. So I was starting to feel this way about 8 months ago, and I got very upset and angry about a couple of things in the space, and I just wrote this script, and it's been evolving And I just felt after the whole Foundation and Blockstream fiasco on Reddit 2 days in a row, I was like, okay, it's time. So it basically goes through the state. You know, I know a lot of people that feel like I do, and they don't speak out, and I don't speak out, or they do, but amongst ourselves, you know, it's like who you talk to about it. Everyone wants to just like smell the daisies and like, you know, pump it up, but it's important to face truths as well. And I just go through the stages like, oh, Bitcoin, discover it, and then you're like, wow, you don't sleep because you keep reading about it, and then you're like, wow, it's gonna change the world, and then you realize that that's gonna take a lot of very hard work,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, there's a lot of nuances in the video that you might not understand unless you're kind of like ancestrally deep into the community. So, I mean, don't feel like left out or bad if you don't. It's probably for the best. But the main point of the video is, can we work really hard so that this technology doesn't just become absorbed by this machine of, you know, the same. And I don't want it to be part of the system. I don't want it to be just another cog, and I don't want it to be similar to this and similar to that, and oh look, it's another PayPal. Like, no, it's its own thing, and it needs to provide use cases that other things don't provide better already. Okay, we need to think about that. There's a lot of things that Bitcoin isn't as good as doing as, you know, already existing tech does. So we really need to not fool ourselves.
Yeah, I'm putting the link to the video in the chat if someone wants to watch it after the show and share it. It's great. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of frustrating. I mean,
Oh, and fuck Libra tax. I'm pretty sure I met that guy at the. So I'm just looking at the comment there. I'm pretty sure I met that guy doing a presentation in the London conference. Maybe it was a different tax. It was like, we must comply, and this is a tax service to incorporate Bitcoin into it. You know, let's just grow up. And I trolled him as well. I have a video on my Facebook wall that I shot when I was, you know, challenging him and calling him basically like a sellout, and like, you're just banking on this new technology because you're a freaking bootlicker, and you're just making you're just molding it back into the system that it's not even part of yet. People like that are the freaking problem. People like that who are literally building things like a tax system so that we can, you know, adhere to the laws that don't even exist for Bitcoin yet. Fuck that guy. Fucking asshole. And I said that to him too. I mean, not as crudely, but I was very, I don't know, I was mean.
Yeah, I was speaking about regulations at Singapore Bitcoin conference, and I got a bunch of questions, and the last of them was exactly this: what about, you know, Bitcoin and avoidance in taxes? I'm like, look, if you impose unreasonable taxes, then people will look for ways how to avoid them. So scrap taxes altogether, or at least minimize them, so people feel they are reasonable, and then people will not bother finding ways how to avoid them. I mean, that it's as simple as that.
There's there's dozens of studies that show that the lower the taxes are, when you lower them, actually you collect more because people don't feel the need to evade them. They feel it's fair, and they feel they're not being robbed, and they actually pay their taxes willingly because it's easier to just pay that smaller amount than to go to an accountant and pay him $100 an hour to evade all the taxes.
Yeah, is it the Leffer's curve? I think the famous, you know, curve that, you know, there's a certain point where, you know, if the taxes are low enough, then you maximize the tax revenue. If they are higher, then people start avoiding. If they're lower, then just because they're lower, the revenue is lower. On the other hand, also, I think Milton Friedman was exactly right on this. If you lower taxes and your tax revenue increases, you haven't lowered taxes enough. I mean, that's an aspect of it as well.
And you and I, being children of the Soviet Union, know this from example, because, like, okay, when I was a very little girl, I remember my dad talking. He was one of the first people after the collapse to have a small business in Russia, and he owned a meat processing plant and made like sausages and stuff. And so he knew that we still have the Soviet mentality. We steal shit, okay? We're poor and we steal stuff because that's how you eat and survive and feed your family. So he'd give people jobs, and then he'd, at the end of every day, would give them like a couple of nice artisan sausages and meats to take home. Because he figured that if he gives some away, they'll steal less. Okay? And I think he was right.
Oh yeah, I lost you a little bit, but I think the audience heard you, so I'll just follow up on that. Speaking of Russia, by the way, so Russia and Bitcoin, and you are you in touch? I guess I mean there are people from the Russian community who are or who were born in Russia or in former Soviet Union who are now in the West. But are you in touch in the actual Russian Bitcoin community? Do you know what's the situation over there? With the and Ukrainian maybe as well with the inflation and with sanctions and everything. How's Bitcoin doing in that part of the world? Do you have any idea?
I'm not in touch specifically with anyone, but I know the community is like there. One of my interviews was translated to Russian. There's like a Russian Bitcoin YouTube channel, so I know the community exists. The thing, like, people, it's illegal in Russia, right? Like, they made it illegal, and it's kind of funny because it was like one of the first countries to do that, and people think that matters, but this is the difference between Russian people and the West, or like Canadians and Americans. Okay, I'll stick to North America. Like, okay, it's illegal. You know how much stuff is illegal in Russia? Putin passed the most laws in 1 year than any country has ever passed in the history of mankind. Okay? Everything's fucking illegal in Russia. Guess what? We don't care. Russian people are all criminals because everything's illegal. We thrive on black markets. We come to America and we thrive on black markets. The most, like, a lot of Bitcoin use is in North York in the Russian community in Toronto, Russian mobsters who launder their money using cryptocurrencies or cryptovaluta in Russian. So, like, Russian people don't care. The problem is Americans do care, and a little proposed bill panics everybody because nobody's going to touch the currency if it's, like, somewhat illegal now. This is why, like, I lose a lot of respect for, those guys.
So
I hate Russian people, but like I love Russian people because they don't care. They don't care. And I love American people, but I hate them too because they're pussies in like a lot of ways. Like it's I'm glad to be both. I think I have a good balance.
yeah, it's very similar to where I come from. I mean, it wasn't as brutal, but still, the underlying culture is there. We've experienced the failure firsthand, the total failure. Like, many. It's very difficult to speak anarcho-capitalism to Germans because or even Singaporeans because the government works reasonably well and they just don't see the failure full blown. So it's difficult for them to grasp it. But you said illegal. Does it mean really illegal? Like you can't own Bitcoin and you can't transact Bitcoin in Russia? Because we've seen these reports all over the place that Bitcoin has been banned in China and has been banned here and there. And it turns out later that actually, it hasn't. That what has been banned was maybe some particular form of, buying or entrance to the market or something. But it's not illegal to own Bitcoin. Is this different in Russia? Is this that strong? You can't actually own Bitcoin in Russia?
I haven't seen any like headlines of them ever enforcing it, and I don't know how they would really like my opinion about the illegality of Bitcoin in Russia is that Putin doesn't give a crap. Like he
Yeah.
doesn't actually care. And people are just like doing like I don't think it's being cracked down on. It's just like another law. Like if they really wanna, they'll single someone out just like America does. I don't know.
Okay, let's pick up another viewer's question. Is there a scenario involving perhaps Wall Street or government involvement where you would no longer be a Bitcoin maximalist? I'm going to give a short answer. No, but I'll leave it to Julia to answer.
Again, that depends on what point in time. I mean, I think that the tech is young. It can be molded to different people's interests, and who knows where it's gonna end up? Like, who knows? Who knows if the mining pools are going to be controlled by a single entity in the next 2 years? Who knows? Who knows if there's going to be so many whitelists that no one can, the miners are going to be so much under the boot that they're going to have to comply with a lot of things. Like, I don't know. I don't know where it's going. I think it could go either way. And I think being aware of all of the directions that it can go gives us a lot of strength, right? We can't be naive about it and honey badger. Like, we have to support projects that actually have its original ethos in mind, in my opinion, not project. I mean, the projects that reveal it to the mainstream are good too, but you need to have both, because what good is it for the mainstream if it just becomes like another freaking, like an easier way of banking or another PayPal? Like, who wants that? I mean, it could be that as well, but that shouldn't be what it's boiled down to. So I don't know, I mean, sure, no, unless it, becomes just like an efficient banking system that's controlled by the government and heavily enforced. I mean, why would I support that?
Yeah. Okay. So if it comes down to these extreme scenarios, then I agree with you. But I think that the probability of that happening is negligible and lower every day, just because of the sheer networking power, or the computing power of the network and in its distribution. I very much like the article by was it Coindesk or Cointelegraph, quoting John Matones about cloud hashing and how it actually helped the industry to distribute the power and to strengthen the network and make it more resilient. And all of these trends are showing that it's establishing itself more and more, and it would be more and more difficult, or pretty much virtually impossible, for anyone to grasp control over it. Also, okay, to be more on the skeptical side, and I like your thoughts on this. I like sort of Jim Rogers' view, for example, who respects the cryptocurrencies. He likes the idea, but he makes a very good point that governments like their control of the money so much that they will find way how to make this impractical by regulations or taxes. I'm fairly optimistic. I think there will be many places where this will not happen. I think there might be places where this will happen, where people will simply follow these ridiculous regulations, and it will become impractical. But I still believe there will be many places in the world where this will not happen, just because governments will either not attempt, or people will not respect it and will overcome all of these problems. What do you think?
Yeah, again, it could go either way. We've seen a 51% attack, months ago, and then the community pulled together and made sure it wasn't 51% again. There does seem to be a consensus towards decentralization overall, which is great. But then you have these companies. You have 21 Inc. who got what, $93 million of funding. What stops them from building like the biggest mining operation ever and taking over, right? I mean, that Peter Thiel, in his book, is quite a big fan of monopolies, and his definition of monopolies is quite loose, and he talks about how there's natural monopolies when you provide a niche product that's the best. So if them building the biggest mining operation is a niche product that's the best, instead of, oh no, actually I just have way more access to money than anybody else, then he's morally okay with that. I think the guy has a chip on his shoulder because he didn't invent Bitcoin. I mean, he's been quoted saying like he wanted PayPal to be like Bitcoin. Like the guy is
Yeah,
messed up, man. It's convoluted and messed up.
yeah, you sound a little bit scary, but you make unfortunately too much sense. Okay, let's move on to something a bit more cheerful. Again, question from Ken: are either of you using Bitcoin daily, weekly, in regular commerce, like buying coffee, gas, office supplies, and so on? I'm gonna start myself. Yes, there's a pretty healthy merchant network here in Singapore Actually, we're meeting with a bunch of libertarians tonight, including some people from Liberty.me in a place that accepts Bitcoin. I'm paying for my air condition cleaning in Bitcoin. I'm paying for some online services and hardware with Bitcoin. Like, yeah, I try to use it every time I can, and I actually get to use it, a few times a week easily. So, what about you? Well, how's it Toronto? By the way, Toronto is one of my favorite North American cities. I would love to see or know that the scene over there is growing and thriving.
It's okay. I mean, Toronto's a bit like I don't know. I don't like Toronto like in and of itself that much. I mean, I know some Bitcoin people there. Most of them have moved elsewhere. Like so I don't have any Bitcoin, so I can't comment on that. I don't. But a friend of mine has Bitcoin, and I know that she uses it for a lot of things like flights and buying spoons and tipping her friends and just transactions that are more simply done with Bitcoin than cash or credit card. Yeah, she loves it, so I get all I live through her.
Yeah, I also we got used to this, and it's a fantastic scenario. Like you finish lunch and someone pays. Jeffrey wrote this in Bit by Bit, his latest book, which you can get if you join Liberty.me, you get it for free, or you can buy it online. And he wrote exactly about this. Like you finish lunch, and there's some change that needs to be exchanged, a couple of dollars, and it just becomes complicated. And all of a sudden, there's Bitcoin. It's just so beautifully easy. You get your phones together,
The one
scan.
time, the one time I did use Bitcoin, which I don't have, was at dinner with Jeffrey and a bunch of other people at the Chicago conference. And like nobody had like cash or like I just put everything on my Visa and everyone, gave me cash and Bitcoin and stuff. It was really easy.
Yeah, that was probably the
And then
event he was writing about in his book. Continue.
yeah, that's I think I participated in that. Thanks, Jeffrey. Love you too. But then since then,
Yeah.
of course, my phone, I lost my phone and it didn't back up my phone wallet. So again, like I don't have Bitcoin. I'm a woman. I don't know how to save my private keys. I'm too stupid.
Oh, come on.
I know. I'm just
Okay. Question here. Have either of you heard of OneBit, the service that uses MasterCard Pay terminals and BitPay in order to give people an option of using Bitcoin in a wider sense? If so, what are your thoughts? I read about it a couple of days ago. I haven't dug into it, to be honest. I don't know, Julia, have you?
I haven't heard of that one specifically, but I do know of a similar service that's coming out or is out. I don't want to talk about it. I don't know if they want it
Okay.
too public yet. But yeah, I think there's a few projects working on things like that. I mean, again, it's bringing it to the mainstream, which unfortunately, like, I was talking to the CoinKite guys about this. They gave me a terminal, and it's really cool. Like, the terminal is really awesome, but you can't use debit cards or credit cards with it and they didn't go that way because they don't want to collect private information of their users. So any company that is incorporating debit cards and credit cards and a kind of interoperability with Bitcoin and those things, they're gonna have to collect information in case they get a subpoena, etc. Which convenience equals the sacrifice of privacy ultimately, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see where it goes. I mean, all these projects just sound so fantastic. The sheer number of wallets that you can choose from these days is amazing. And this is the beauty of the unregulated free market. The moment that people don't need to ask for permission to create something, they just go bananas and they create stuff. And every other day you wake up and you find out what else has been created or is being prepared, and it's just so exciting to watch every day. I mean,
It
this is just one of those many things.
is. It's really cool. It's really cool. I mean, I always talk about the Soviet Union and how, like we would have just all died without the black markets. That's where innovation happens. That's where human nature is at its prime. So if people think that like this isn't happening, it's always been happening. It always will happen. So I mean, and being participating in this community and seeing how quickly people have created things or a tech that didn't even exist, until very recently. Man, like it's cool to be human.
Okay, let me pick up another question. Estimations from Federal Reserve and European Central Bank is about 100,000 users for Bitcoin. Jeffrey Robinson, whom actually I don't know who that is, could someone comment on it, or maybe you know, Julia, has said 250,000. These are real people, not addresses. What are your thoughts and projections? I don't know, to be honest. 100,000 globally sounds a bit too low. I would say it's probably more, but yeah, I have no idea. And to be honest, that's one of the beautiful things about it, that we just don't know. Because there's no way to know, because nobody collects and maintains this information. Nobody's can spy on us. Nobody can find out. If you want to have Bitcoin, you can do it without anyone, having any clue that you've ever owned, and bought any Bitcoin, that you are hedging against the inflation that the government is forcing upon you. And this is one of the wonderful things about Bitcoin. So I don't know, 100,000 sounds a bit low, maybe. I don't know, Julia?
I don't know. I should look into that. That'd be interesting. I guess the best way to estimate is probably to look at all the exchanges that do gather information, like uh, Coinbase, and all the top exchanges. And I don't know if they reveal numbers specifically. I doubt they do. But I'm sure there is some sort of deduction that can be made from traffic volumes, and then go from there.
Yes, 100. So yeah, I just did a quick math. 100,000 is 0.01%. So one in 10,000 people, less than or something more than one and a half person in 10,000 globally. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if that's realistic, then it just shows you what space is out there to conquer. It also shows you, gives you an idea of where the price of Bitcoin, if that's what you're interested in, can be, considering how many people use allegedly Bitcoin today and how many more can, and if they try to, where will what will happen with the price. So yeah, I'm very optimistic about the fact that we don't know, and the fact that even if we have, a slightest clue how low it is and what is the potential of that to grow. Blockstream, you have any thoughts, Julia?
Yeah, I mean, who was following the discussion on Reddit the other day between, BTC Drag and Peter Todd and Gregory Maxwell? I just want to know how informed people are. I don't, well, I don't know. There's a lot of drama. Like people raise some questions about Blockstream, and Gregory has been accused of lying about a couple of things, having to do with his involvement in the company and like some other technical things. And I mean, this would take a very long time to go into. I mean, there's mailing lists of people calling him out and him saying, also without him back. This is core dev drama, like mostly. Um, Blockstream hasn't actually done anything yet. They have a lot of funding from the people that I know in the company and that I've personally met. I like them. Um, but I also trust the opinions of some of my closest allies in the industry. And there's also some objective facts that, can't be denied about some of the things that some people there have said. So, anytime you have a big, well-funded company working on, innovation, and then you have core devs working for that company, you have to be critical and you have to raise questions, because this is what I'm talking about. Money and interest influencing the actual development of the technology, right? So if Blockstream wants to develop one type of technology and the protocol doesn't quite align itself with how they want to do it, well, they have a couple of core devs on the team. They could use their influence to change the core of Bitcoin to their needs. I'm not saying that they do that or that they will do that. Gregory has come out and said he's put very stringent safeguards in place so those things don't happen. But when you make your own safeguards, pretty easy to break them probably. Also, anyway, I don't know. I won't get too personal about it. I could talk about this for a long time. We'll see. We have
Yeah,
to
I
see.
agree. Yeah, I agree. I actually I like the whole idea. We spoke about this with Jeffrey and Roger in the first show, and the whole concept of side chains. It seems much more plausible than than altcoins, which I'm fairly skeptical about. And yeah, we'll see where it goes. It seems super interesting, super innovative. And I don't know people involved personally. So it's great to hear you mentioning some of them, and mentioning what that they seem like a good people and what they're doing. So yeah, I'd like to see the results.
We'll see. I
Um,
mean, the side chains are interesting. A lot of people say they're not very different than altcoins. So I mean, there's, again, I don't, they haven't done anything yet, so it's hard to be
yeah.
critical. But at the same time, you don't want to wait till they do something that's, not, you know, uh, aligned with what I think is the Bitcoin ethos. You don't want to wait for that to happen before criticizing them. So, I mean, they should take it as a compliment of us, waving a red flag, because that means we consider them a powerful entity. They should take it as a compliment, and they should participate in the conversation um, with the community if they care to. If they don't want to be accused of things, and they should clear things up in an honest way. That's what it is. What it is. What do you expect when you get $21 million and you have two core devs on your team? What do you expect?
Yeah. Question from Jayron. What are okay? I'll probably have to fix the grammar here a little bit. What is the most exciting thing you see in the Bitcoin over the next year or so? Julia.
Sorry, I was looking at the chat log. What
Yeah,
was the
I
question?
was looking at the same. For those who can see it or will watch it on YouTube, I'm gonna read it. Gavin has a facial hair now. Bitcoin price dropped too low. He can no longer afford razor. Thank you for that.
Very
Beautiful.
funny.
So okay, I'll repeat the question. What are you most excited about in Bitcoin over the next year?
For the price to go to 1,000. Yay!
You don't own any Bitcoin. What would that be good for you?
I know. I just want the tech to succeed. Okay, some of the thing I'm kind of involved in more artistic endeavors these days. Um, so I'll keep you posted on that. And mentioning art, my friend Max Field does really cool Bitcoin artwork, and they're called Kaolarians, and they're literally physical Bitcoins. They're really cool. You can go to here. I'll post the website there. So I'm trying to the freaking core dev drama and the Reddit and all of these issues that have been bothering me for 8 months, they weigh me down. And I mean, I think in the near future I'm going to be strictly involved in the more artistic projects to do with Bitcoin and exploring it as a concept less than as a technology. Just because I'm an artist. My background's in art, so I figure, why aren't I participating on that side of things?
Yeah,
I
and
don't know if
I would
that's a
add that
cop out
it's.
or not.
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, I don't know, like, who knows? I kind of go with the tide. Like, if something sparks my interest or enrages me, I'll participate. And but I'm trying to kind of like relax a little bit.
Yeah, that's the thing about. I mean, every other day, you wake up and you find out what's going on. It's so difficult to say what will we be most excited about in the next year. We have no idea because we have no idea what will be announced next week, let alone next year. I can tell you what I'm most excited about right now. I'm actually flying to Prague on Tuesday, and Prague in Czech Republic. Being fairly small city, and not like super wealthy or super known for having its own Silicon Valley or a ton of capital, venture capital money. There's just so much stuff going on in Bitcoin, so much innovation. There's a single company there that does more innovation than Bitcoin industry in any like many other countries, much bigger countries combined. I'm holding this hardware wallet, for example. They are doing, and they invented the pool mining. But and then there's this space called Crypto Anarchy Institute, which is this big building with co-working space and cafe and maker space and hacker space, accepting only Bitcoin, nothing else, and this big amazing community just living for freedom and living for promoting Bitcoin. And it seems fairly random, giving that Prague really isn't known as the technological center of the world or something, but there is a combination of that European hacking mentality that you mentioned at the beginning, that people just don't respect these arbitrary rules, and they find ways how to go around them. And yeah, the result is fantastic. So anyone who has a chance, I encourage you, including you, Julia, to go to Prague to visit Crypto Anarchy Institute, to visit the community. I'll be there, most of the next month. So definitely,
That'd be
if you find a way, um, get over there. Another question from Eric: what do you think about the possibility of upcoming financial crisis, and how do you see this impacting crypto? This is something I've been ranting about for a long time, too long probably.
Do you
But Julia, go ahead.
do you think the European kind of more leaning crypto anarchist communities are strong because Europe has hit such a low and America's still kind of keeping themselves up? I mean, dude, if you want Bitcoin to go to 10,000, you have all the freaking banks collapse, have another financial crisis. That's when Bitcoin's gonna succeed. Like, I'm not the first one to say that, so I welcome it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the first bubble of 2013 was caused by Cyprus. Just people all of a sudden woke up and found out they can't get their money from the bank account. I mean, it's supposed to be their money, and all of a sudden they can't get access to it. They just firsthand experienced what is fractional reserve banking. That your money in the bank is not your money. The moment you hand it over to the bank, that money goes away, and it's not yours anymore.
Yeah.
You have just some the bank has some sort of obligation, which in fact by the law is not really an obligation, and their state insurance, which doesn't have enough money in it, and so on and so forth. So we people firsthand experience all these examples how the system is slowly failing, and I totally agree that such events. Cyprus is tiny. It's a tiny place in the middle of nowhere. Imagine something like that happening in Spain. Imagine there's a new service in Spain. You can withdraw fiat, I mean cash, from ATMs via Bitcoin. Now imagine this well, from our point of view, super optimistic scenario when all of a sudden people wake up and they can't withdraw money from their bank account, and some Bitcoiner comes to the ATM, sends Bitcoin to the ATM, and it gives him cash. Imagine that PR potential for Bitcoin. I mean, this would, you know, we call it to the moon. This would be such an event.
Well, people realize that they actually aren't free and that the government can do whatever they want. Um, they'll use things that are a little bit better. It's that simple.
So friend of mine here objects that it wasn't caused by Cyprus, but it was correlated in time. I wonder why do you think that? I think, I mean, it wasn't just the correlation. I agree that hardly anyone in Cyprus heard about Bitcoin, but the effect that people globally, not only in Cyprus, that they realize that, they can wake up one day and can't get access to their money, and they heard that this Bitcoin thing cannot be blocked in the same way. I think there was. Um, Anyway, so yeah, I think this would be in a way great event. We of course, I mean, not that we want that to happen, but we know it's gonna
I
happen,
want it
and
to,
we know it.
I want it to happen sooner the better. Why are we like rip the
Yeah,
band-aid
exactly,
off?
because it needs to happen, and the more it is prolonged, the worse the consequences be. So we'd rather for it to happen tomorrow, because then that'll minimize the consequences.
I'd rather
And
tell my children, like, hello, but no one's having children anymore, right? No one cares.
uh,
That's why
Julia,
that's one of the problems. No one
yeah.
wants to work in this world because they're not leaving an imprint of their genetic material behind. So why do they care? They're gonna die. People have kids, please.
Okay, I'll throw this question, and I'll leave it up to you whether you will answer or not. Who is the most annoying person in cryptocurrency?
The most annoying? Oh my god, there's so many. Have an answer, but I will not throw this person under the bus because they are already under the bus and I don't want to add to it.
Okay, I'll drop it.
Okay.
Okay, we have like 4 minutes, 3 minutes. What happens to Bitcoin mining when we get close to 21 million Bitcoins mined? Are you okay with the amount of energy used on Bitcoin mining currently? By Sean.
That's like two different questions. Well, when we mine it out, it will just be transaction fees. The transaction fees will have to go up for the mining incentives to continue. Okay. Um, and what was the second part? Oh, the energy. I'm not an environmentalist. I don't care. I mean, well, like humans will find a way. I mean, if we'll find a way. I'm not that concerned about it. The only concern is the incentive again. So when it gets so costly, you know again you get pooling of powers that can afford to actually keep mining. That sure that's a problem, but I think he's more talking about from like an environmentalist point of view, which I don't have.
Yeah, so for the first question, actually, I don't think that transaction fees will necessarily need to go up, because I mean, presumably the value of Bitcoin, or the price of Bitcoin in fiat, or its value compared to real goods should continue to go up. So even if transaction fees remain flat, they should go up compared to the costs of the expenditures for mining. So. I don't think it's necessarily for those fees to
But
go up. And as for
even if
for
they
the
do
energy
go up a
use,
little bit, like yeah, I agree with you. But I was just saying, even if they do go up, like big deal, it's still going to be better than everything else.
yeah, and we'll still have these off-chain solutions that will allow us to do the microtransactions. I'm not worried about that. And the same for the energy usage. I mean, if you're worried about energy usage, here in Singapore, just if people, when they commute in the morning, they play games on their phones, which has some energy expenditures, and I mean, if you're worried about that, then you can see what would be considered a waste of energy. People, instead of playing games, they could educate themselves or something.
What
I mean,
I
yeah,
think
I couldn't care less. The world from the environment point of view is getting better and better by the day. Anyway, I don't think Bitcoin will, change this or reverse this, even slightly.
you know what's going to happen. Some guy in like a Chinese like operation, like an illegal Chinese mining operation, will be like, "Damn, like we're using a lot of energy and it's costing us, and like the governments could track us down by how much energy we use. I'm going to invent a new source of energy that's clean and easy to convert. And this like Chinese guy will do it because of the financial incentive, and the whole world will benefit. That's my theory. That's how innovation happens.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the last question before we go. What is Ghost Outside the Machine? And I'm placing the link to the chat for people to know what I'm talking about. So what is that phrase? Can you explain that before we go?
Well, it's like an old school, like philosophical concept. I mean, Hume covers it. There's also a really cool anime called Ghost Inside the Machine, and it's about uh, advanced robots, but they're still humans because they have a soul. And it plays with the idea of at what point are you a machine, at what point are you human, and how can you differentiate between the two when we haven't even defined what being a human being is. So why am I less human than you just because you're flesh and I'm not? There's a lot of iconography and old concepts that go with it. So I kind of took that and boiled it down to, the machine being our current systems, our, mechanical environments that we are forced to live inside of. So that's our body, right? So what's our ghost? What's our soul? So could Bitcoin be something outside of that? Can I don't want Bitcoin to be inside the machine. I want it to be the ghost, like the soul outside the machine. I want it to live on its own platform. And um, yeah, I mean, it's incredibly wishful thinking, but I think if it happens with anything, it's going to be with Bitcoin, at least in my lifetime.
Yeah, I hope. Anyway, check out that link. It's a beautiful product, beautiful t-shirt, and if you want to support Julia and what she's doing, it's a great way to support her financially and get something for it. Thanks everyone. Please check out bitcoinbombs.com for the contest for the best anti-war meme that I mentioned. Check out Julia's page, bravetheworld.com, and her YouTube channel, and check out liberty.me and sign up to meet other Bitcoiners, other libertarians, and be on this island of positive deviation. And thank you, Julia, for coming.
Thanks for having me, Thomas. It was really nice to meet you.
Bye bye.
And it takes one guy who doesn't like Bitcoin to, throw a guy in jail over it, or to throw a couple of people in jail over it, or to put forward a bill that's going to throw even more people in jail for it. So, I mean, for people to think that we're free in any sense, yeah, sure, a lot of us are free because we haven't freaking done anything to feel the state's hand on, uh, any part of our bodies. But the people that do things often get thrown and locked away because, they are watching. They are watching. They don't want us to transgress any of the plans that they have for how society should function and how much tax people should pay, etc. So, I mean, I was talking to I work at my parents and I own a restaurant, and I was talking to one of our regulars about it, and he was just interested, and I told him what happened in the trial, and he's like, that's not legal. That's no way that that's happened. Like, I had to convince him that this even occurred because he couldn't fathom in his mind that's how crony the whole system was. Like he's like, but that's illegal. That's not. You can't just withhold evidence. I'm like, yeah, you can. The judge does whatever she wants because Schumer has told her exactly what to do, and she needs her career to go forward.
Yeah, this was so. This is the I think this is the lowest level, the district judge, which is probably looking at moving upwards and using this as a career, destroying young man's life over her career. I mean, there were some moments that you and others reported, which were fascinating. Ross' mother reported about this as well. That her she basically changed her mind over a weekend that she agreed to allow a witness or witness in on Friday, but then or Thursday I think was the last day of the trial. Then came the weekend, and on Monday she came back and she said, actually, no, this will not be allowed. And my question is, who did she meet in those 3 days? Who gave her notes and instructions? And there were some other moments like Andreas was not allowed as a witness because he's not a credible Bitcoin expert. I mean, Andreas. Hello, everyone. Welcome, Julia. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm Tomas Forgac. Julia is an anti-state activist and a Bitcoin activist. We're going to talk about that in a minute, and you'll be able to ask questions if you want to. There's a field right below the video. Just shoot a question. You can upvote any other question you like. We'll pick them up as we go and talk about them. Before we start, I'd like to mention one thing. You've all probably heard about Google blocking ads for antiwar.com for some weird reasons. Now, Bitcoin.bombs.com runs a contest related to this for the best anti-war or pro-peace memes that would, expose sort of this activity. Would be great if you join there. Our prices for it: Roger Beer and Luxtech donated 1 Bitcoin for the winner, and there are a few other great prices like 10 ounces of silver and 1 ounce of Bitcoin equivalent silver and so on. So it's bitcoin.bombs.com. You can send your submissions to don'texposeevil@bitcoin.bombs.com. And all the submissions will be published, and the winner or a few winners will get one of these great prizes. Welcome again, and hi, Julia.
Hello.
So you're an anti-state activist. Could you now we know how state with its monopoly over the violence and law enforcement, how it misuses and exploits its position. We've seen it just recently, a couple of days ago, with the policeman shooting innocent man or unarmed man in the back. But it is less clear how the state misuses.
Selected the judge. Her name's Forrest, and it went according to his plan. We now know that a lot of the things that occurred during the trial, well, I knew this while I was there, and a lot of the public didn't really get that information until now. A lot of the information was actually either redacted or not allowed to even be presented to the jury, let alone talked about publicly. And now we find out that 2 federal agents were actually responsible for huge sums of Bitcoin laundering between, Mt. Gox and into their own pockets. And one of them was responsible for having the conversation with the hitman. So we weren't allowed to know about this. And now we know about it, and we know that the judge knew about it, and we know that Schumer knew about it, we know that the prosecution knew about it, and it was hidden from being part of the trial. How is that justice? How is that following any kind of legal practice that's supposed to be, the kind of the pinnacle of American justice and liberty? I mean, why do we have courts? To make sure that, guilty people get punished and innocent people don't. Why do we have the system? The system is very easily played, and that was what happened.
Yeah, it was proposed to us. So you're saying, and this is something that I haven't so far considered. So you're saying one of the main motivations behind the whole process was the prosecutor's actual hatred towards the cryptocurrencies in general?
No, Schumer wants to crack down in the state of New York. He wants to, and in the city especially, he wants to crack down on cryptocurrencies, and he wants to make sure that certain laws are, in place. And he has close ties with Losky, who did the Bit license, and it's all very incestual. It's the same powers driving the same oppressions over freedoms, as it always has been.
Uses its position over a monopoly of the money, and too many people still think this is somehow desired and it gives money the value. So how do you see this related, the monopoly of the state over money and its ability to exploit that position and to infringe on our rights?
Well, money is just human interaction with value. So if you control money, then you control human beings. That's simple to me.
Yeah, it reminds me of Erik, who was on the last show, who quoted that famous quote, "Give me control of nations' money, and I care not who makes its laws." Um,
Hmm.
so, what activities related to liberty and to Bitcoin are you mostly into?
What? Oh, I don't know. Anything, anything that's important, I guess. It depends what's going on. That's a really, I don't even know how to answer that.
Yeah, you've been you've had first-hand experience with the Silk Road trial. Um, Silk Road, we know, or most of us know what it is. It's an honest website that just provided a marketplace for the free market without infringement of the government to take place, and the government clamped down on it. It arrested the founder, and it started what I would call monster process that would be typical for the place where you and I were born in, behind the Iron Curtain. Um, can you tell us a little bit more about how the process went? What were your findings, and your feelings from the whole thing?
Basically, Schumer, which is, NYC's ruling hand, wants to crack down on cryptocurrency. So he was a huge push for this case ending up the way it has ended up. He hands
Whom else? Like, list top three people in the world whom you consider Bitcoin experts. No one in his sane mind would probably not include Andreas. Like, what the hell is going on here?
Yeah, he was the first. She asked me what my opinion on that was. I'm like, Andreas, get Andreas. He's well spoken and he can put it in layman's terms for the very dumbass jury. And he was denied. He was denied. And if you were there, it was ludicrous. So first of all, the family had hired a private investigator from England to to hold their own investigation about the server, about everything that went on online, about the hard drive, and all of this stuff, right? And she wasn't allowed to say anything. She flew down there from England. They paid for all of the stuff. She sat there and she was instructed basically not to say anything. They literally introduced her, asked her like one question, and then she left. So obviously the restrictions the judge put on this defense's witness was so stringent that she literally couldn't say anything. And then Andreas being denied and other witnesses being denied. They had like 2-3 witnesses and they weren't allowed to say freaking anything. It was an abhorrent uh, power grab by her.
Yeah, it was sad. Well, let's hope new rounds of this trial will go better. We'll see. Okay, let's move to something a little bit more cheerful. I want to remind everyone, if you wanna ask some questions, just type them below the video. So I've seen you attended some very interesting conferences and events recently. Do you have any favorite moments? Do you have any favorite products? Any new trends that you are really hyped about in Bitcoin that you've noticed recently at those events?
I have a favorite